Hi everyone, and welcome to the Spotlight on Aberdeenshire session. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Will Clarke. I'm the Aberdeenshire Mountain Bike and Adventure Tourism Development Coordinator. This session is a panel discussion looking at the strategic approach, partnership and relationship building we've had going on here in Aberdeenshire over the past couple of years in the spirit of making this a sustainable mountain bike destination. We're joined today by some of our key partners, Jennifer, Belinda and Chris from some of our key partner organisations, and we'll hear some more from them later. In fact, those organisations are really key to making Aberdeenshire a sustainable destination because we're all working towards shared objectives and sharing the same messages. This is a chance for you to hear about how things have been going, hear some different industry perspectives, and most of all, to ask some questions and get involved. So if you're signing in, you can see at the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions for myself, Jennifer, Belinda or Chris, please pop them in there and we'll review them later on. So what we'll do, we'll run through a little bit of the story so far in Aberdeenshire, and then we'll hand over to our guests to explain why they're involved and what their organisation contributes. So the story so far for Aberdeenshire is in 2018, we started a mountain bike development project principally funded by LEADER. That had 4 key areas focusing on facilities, events, business development, and attracting visitors to the region. What did we do to address those areas? We had some workshops, we had clinics, we engaged with landowners, we did some media development, we provided training and support, we worked with new and existing businesses, we did a lot of community engagement, and we also engaged with partners outside the mountain biking industry. We thought the project was a success. Our partners in the whole mainly agreed, and some independent research concluded that some of the key words and key findings in relation to the project were about community, collaboration, economic growth and trail development, all part of a sustainable mountain bike destination. So as we progressed through that project, we got in the room with many partners and many businesses from not just mountain biking but other sports, facilitated by Opportunity Northeast. We all agreed that something good was happening, but that it could be more and we could do more. We had ideas in the room, we had experience of delivering projects. We supplemented this with consultation and research, and the Northeast Adventure Tourism project was born on the back of this. This is our new project, which begun this year, which again has 4 areas of focus. One is around 6 key outdoor and adventure activities: mountain biking, road cycling, marine sports, ski centre diversification, hiking and a long distance trail. We again want to focus on events, which is supporting existing events, but also attracting new. We want to encourage growth for our projects and our businesses, providing one-to-one support, networking and cluster opportunities. And we also want to raise awareness through market campaigns, developing a media bank and conducting further research to see the full scope of this sector. That is basically where we're at right now. And I'm delighted to welcome our guest panelists, each of whom are important parts of the Northeast Adventure Tourism project. I'd like to invite them to say a little bit about themselves and their company or organisation and why they got involved. We'll go Jennifer, Belinda and then Chris. And once they've finished with those, we'll move on to some Q&As. Thank you very much. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Will, and good afternoon, everybody. Great to see such a good turnout, both to the whole event and to the session focused on the North East of Scotland. So my name's Jennifer Craw, I'm Chief Executive of Opportunity Northeast. We have at the very heart of our organisation the ambition with the private and public sector working in partnership, the vision to diversify the future of this region's economy. And within that we work with 5 sectors: energy, life sciences, food and drink, digital entrepreneurship and tourism. So we approached adventure tourism through a tourism lens. I think we have been informed and educated by both our partners, people like Will, Belinda and Chris, about the opportunity this offers in terms of the wider region and for future employment and jobs, but equally around the existing population, how we continue to secure and attract talent into this region and support everybody in terms of health and well-being. So our focus has been about how can we support growth and enhance the offering. and how can we play a part as Opportunity North East to work with partners and other organisations and contribute to continuing to develop, but very much with the industry at its heart and the focus of the future.
Thank you, Jennifer. Over to Belinda.
Thanks, Will, and good afternoon, everyone. Belinda Miller, I'm the Head of Economic Development for Aberdeenshire Council. And as you can imagine, a local authority has a lot of things to do, so certainly not going to go into all of those. But traditionally, when it comes to cycling, it was more related to the function of cycling, whether it's sort of commuting or active travel. And in some cases, the provision of things like long distance paths for outdoor access. But I have to say it was 2016 when I was actually at this conference, when I was in Aviemore. I turned up and I was inspired to understand that the economic opportunity, which at the time was very much borders based around mountain biking, and that Aberdeenshire was certainly missing out on a trick somewhere, and Graham mentioned that this morning as well when he was doing his presentation. So for us, it's about where's the economic opportunity that mountain biking brings and adventure tourism in the widest sense brings to Aberdeenshire, from a tourism perspective, from an employment perspective, from a creating new businesses perspective. And with that sort of background, that's why we've become even more involved with the project and supporting Will's role, and working with Opportunity North East and with Chris and our partners with Scottish Enterprise as well. So from us, it's about what's the economic opportunity, not just what is the value of cycling in its own right, which I know many of us enjoy regardless of that side of things. So thanks, Will.
Thanks, Belinda. And finally to Chris.
Thank you, Will, and good afternoon. My name's Chris Foy, and I'm Chief Executive of Visit Aberdeenshire. We're the destination marketing and management organisation for Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire. Adventure tourism is becoming a critical part, I think, a very really important part of the offer that we have. I think it's really important when in it being in the business of the destination marketing, destination management, that we play to our strengths. And from what we just heard from Jennifer and Belinda, without repeating a lot of what they said there, it's becoming increasingly apparent that we have a great opportunity in this particular area. From our perspective at Visit Aberdeenshire, I guess we connect, as we do in a number of different areas of the visitor economy, in key ways. To draw out a few specifics, we certainly look into the big focus on insights, understanding the opportunity, what the market opportunity is, and translating those opportunities and insights for local businesses, working with businesses to develop their skills, their understanding of the market, and provide their knowledge of routes to market. And then through our marketing activity, taking both the destination and individual businesses to market through different channels that are appropriate to themselves. And quite critical to the way we operate is to evaluate the impact of our work as well. So we have a number of building blocks in place that we're starting to apply to the adventure tourism sector, and we're really looking forward to really getting stuck into this over the coming years.
Thanks very much, Chris. And for everyone listening, that is a bit of a whirlwind tour of what's been happening and how each organisation is contributing. But as James has mentioned in the comments, Aberdeenshire's pretty bonny when the sun's out. And I think we all recognise it's a pretty good place to ride mountain bikes, and there's a lot of associated opportunities. So I have some questions. And I guess the first one might come to is 2020 has been quite a difficult year with all the COVID factors in play. So Chris, I was wondering how you think COVID will impact us moving into 2021.
Well, there's no doubt that it's going to have a significant impact on the tourism industry globally. It's one of the hardest hit. I think if you look across all the various sectors that have really stood out in terms of being impacted. But with challenge comes opportunity. I was reading this morning that the French and Italian governments have decided, or recommending, not to open ski resorts this winter, which is going to have a major effect on their sectors. But I think that does focus minds on alternative ways of enjoying and getting outdoors in the winter and other seasons ahead. I think short term, it's going to be damaging for any business who's operating on small margins, and on the whole, tourism businesses operate on small margins. Longer term, a huge opportunity if the offer meets market expectation. And through all the insight work that's come out over the summer, there's been a very useful exercise being carried out through the summer months called the Scottish Tourism Index, which has been interviewing residents of Scotland about their travel intentions, what's important to them, and we're seeing repeatedly coming through these surveys that getting out into the outdoors, experiencing more of the great outdoors and the experience and the adventures that can be enjoyed in environments like we have in Aberdeenshire are becoming more and more important. So the opportunity is certainly there, but we need to match the experiences with expectation, and also bring the fact that we have such a wonderful destination to people's attention. It's great to see more uptake in riding bicycles and bicycle sales over the summer. We now need to translate those into actual, visits and getting beyond the getting beyond people's own backyards to get out and enjoy some different scenery as well. So certainly short-term challenges, but longer-term opportunities there as long as we seize it.
Thanks, Chris. And maybe to Jennifer with this one, we've got a great groundswell of support and collaboration going on in the Northeast, but if there was something to take us to the next level, particularly in regards to mountain biking, what do you think that might be, and how can the collaborative way we're working help?
Yeah, so I have to admit not to being a mountain biker and the only person in this panel not a mountain biker, so I'm going to say that up front. So what I learn and hear is what I by listening to an audience such as this and the people who are directly involved, and that includes Will, Belinda mainly, unless maybe so Chris is more of a road biker, I think. I think the key thing is that we can agree what a shared ambition is. And what certainly when as Opportunity Northeast, when we entered into this arena in the broader context of adventure tourism, and obviously mountain biking is at the forefront of leading that, I think what we were trying to understand is what does the natural built landscape provide, and it clearly provides a great amenity and quite a unique special amenity, and what needs to go beyond that in terms of built facilities. So I think it is about having that shared sense of what will grow it so that it doesn't detract from the quality of the experience for those already enjoying that, but actually builds to grow numbers without detracting either from the environment or the experience of those currently. And I do think that's where the network will coordinates and comes together is really, really important. So I think what's our shared ambition, and is it shared? And how do we move beyond that? And where we need funding to do it, how do we build capacity into the system to go for that funding, which may or may not yet exist, but actually build a case for future funding? So I think it's in steps. The steps that have been taken thus far are really important. These next steps of checking in the current environment, as Chris said, and equally in terms of future visitor numbers, how do we move forward? And I think it's about marrying those two things together, vision and ambition, and then actual things, projects, activities that will deliver on that, and then how we can secure, if it needs funding or resources across the partnership with industry, how we could support those. And I think often it's about willingness and sometimes about funding, and it's getting the balance between the two of those to make sure we're working in parallel together towards a shared goal. If that starts to answer the question, Will?
Good effort, Jennifer, good effort, thank you. Belinda, one for you. You've probably been involved with the mountain bike project the longest of our partners on the call, and I think you would recognise that we've got a really engaged mountain bike community, but it's a mixture of public, private and volunteers. Do you see that clubs, charities and volunteer groups will have a big role to play in moving the region forward as a destination?
Thanks, Will. And that's a really good and challenging question, isn't it? Because what we absolutely need to do is bring our communities with us, whether they are active communities or whether they just want to observe and see what the opportunities are. The recent fund that's just been announced by Scottish Cycling, that's probably a classic example, whereas where I got in touch with quite a lot of our elected members to say, are you aware of this fund? And this may be an opportunity to consider something like pump tracks in some of our towns, which and an awful lot of our communities have come back and said that's actually something of real interest to them. They understand that sort of groundswell opportunity of getting young people involved. And I think probably going back to your first question around COVID, I think an awful lot of the communities started to understand the value of cycling for young people as something to do, particularly when they're outdoors, etc. So from that point of view, I think that's going to be key. But I don't see any way that we can deliver on our mountain biking and adventure tourism opportunities in Aberdeenshire without bringing the communities with us, without bringing the clubs with us. Some of the biggest challenges, of course, though, is funding. I know funding's not everything, but if we are to provide better facilities and ensure that people can get involved in an active way, we're going to have to consider how we can access as much funding as possible. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's certainly not. We all know that, but we're starting to see some sort of opportunities come through with replacement of EU funding and things like that. So I think it's about us all working together as partners and helping to support those communities and clubs to find the opportunities that they want to do. And the most important thing is participation. And if we don't have participation, growing, we're not going to achieve the Aberdeenshire opportunities that we're all envisaging.
Thanks, Belinda. So you mentioned the Scottish Cycling Facilities Fund there, and someone has put in the questions, and I'll put this to the whole panel, and I have an answer as well. Do we think that the area really needs a purpose-built mountain bike trail centre to act as a major focus hub for mountain biking and tourism? And before any of the panelists want to join in, I can confirm, which I think many of the listeners will know, that there is an identified gap in Aberdeenshire for a purpose-built facility. It's identified in the Scottish Mountain Bike Strategy, which is the only actually mountain bike development strategy in the world at the moment. And we're working with several projects to try and advance their claims, as well as with several pump track projects and other things that Belinda mentioned. Well, I guess just to open it up to the wider panel, do we all think that a trail centre would be a good addition to the tourism offering? Go on ahead, Chris.
I'll just leap in. Sorry, I was waiting for my cue. We commissioned some research back in the late part of the summer, early autumn, to really better understand the adventure tourism opportunity in the northeast, and we surveyed people across Scotland and down as far as sort of Leeds, Manchester way to get an understanding of what ticks the right boxes without at that stage citing Aberdeenshire in particular. And that did come through. I don't have the figure to hand, but in terms of the importance of sort of standout facilities really came through very strongly in the survey among consumer demand. So from that evidence alone, whether it's a large focal point or just the importance of infrastructure, we know that is absolutely critical. And I think that's been demonstrated over the years through other projects, whether they've been in Scotland, Wales, or elsewhere in the UK.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I think as Jennifer mentioned as well, it's key that that's part of the entire region's vision, and it fits in with everything else we're doing. The more we can do in collaboration and cooperation, the more chance of success we have with these facilities, with the growing participation, with attracting increased investment, more visitors. It's all very much part of a joined up picture, which developing mountain biking in Scotland are trying to help, but it's all about the partners and collaboration and buy-in from all the different groups as well.
Can I just add something in there, Will, then as well? So maybe if those of us who bike and when we used to go away on holidays, think about what do we do when we do that? So from a consumer point of view, we tend to do a quick Google search on the area that we may go to. So in my case, it's quite often I will be going somewhere on holiday and I'll see if there is mountain biking opportunities as part of my holiday. And trail centres are the thing that pops up. So it's something that gives you a name, it's something that gives you a brand, as well as the opportunity to do something else. And then you know, from an economic point of view, what we want is the tourists to come to Aberdeenshire, to use our guides, to use our trails. And if they have the facilities, it will be an additional attractor. So I think a major trail centre absolutely adds to that. And I think it's the thing that, as you've just said, is it's the gap in our market. We know for a fact that people who are not necessarily avid mountain bikers, but would like the idea of coming and doing it as part of their holiday, need to feel that there is somewhere that they can go and feel secure that they can go. So most of us know Aberdeenshire really well. We know where we would just pick up, you know, just go find a forest, and we'll find a trail in there, whether it's on trail forks or something like that. But we can't assume our tourist consumers can do that. We need to be able to help them to do that as well. So it's definitely vital to our story in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much, Belinda. I'll come back to you on this one, Jennifer. Obviously there's an interest and a desire there in purpose-built trail facilities, but most of what we have currently is natural trails built on a variety of different landowners' ground. How do we encourage and support those landowners to get involved with our project and support mountain biking and mountain bike tourism development, do you think?
And I think it's through engagement. I mean, hitherto, most of the engagement in the project we've been involved in has been with kind of the industry, understand our baseline, understand the economic opportunities so we can start to build the case for the capital funding. Without a doubt, landowners need to feel part of that solution. So the built facilities, the trails, I'm not sure I'm expert in knowing and understanding what pump tracks are. I'm definitely not expert actually, but just say that, admit that. So I think as we move into this next phase, we definitely need to re-engage with the industry and re-engage with the landowners on a shared ambition. Because as I say, our natural environment is one of our incredible assets and we have to protect that. And I think everybody's got that at their heart. So how do you do that in growing this opportunity, but equally in a sustainable way that meets all stakeholder and mountain bikers use requirements, it's a very practical word. So I think it is a good reminder that the engagement has to go. I mean, Will, you set up, we had this engagement, has to go beyond the core group to a group of landowners so that there's no surprises. And some of that has happened for sure. Obviously Cairngorm National Park are aware of some of the ambition, but there are more private landowners and maybe it's about a sustained communication and engagement programme over the next few months to help share and shape what we're actually structuring for the future, because I think we are structuring something different as a result of COVID than maybe pre-COVID in truth. Yeah, so it's a good point. We need to engage.
Well, if I could jump in there, I think that point around collaboration is absolutely critical, but also articulating the benefit in a way that makes sense to the particular stakeholder. Enthusiasm alone is not going to achieve ultimate results. I think some of the most successful people I've ever met in the business of sport or the world of sport business have been people who haven't actually had a passion for the sport that they're in charge of, but they've got the right passion and they've got the right mix of people around them, whether that's football, IOC or racing yachts around the world. You need to have that business acumen. You need to have the benefits articulated and understood by all stakeholders, particularly those who are going to get behind the project in a major way. So definitely enthusiasm gets us so far, and without that passion, it would never get anywhere. But it needs to have that blend of insight and acumen to take projects forward. And I saw Donald cropping up in the box just now about the enthusiasm in Huntly. Your enthusiasm did get me out to Gartley Forest the other day, so I have actually got my tyres dirty around there.
Thanks, Chris. And I guess as by way of a short project update, we have had talk about trails engagement evenings for riders and landowners to come together. We have representation through Scottish Land and Estates. We also have a really valuable on-the-ground resource working with a lot of landowners in the Aberdeenshire Trail Association who are physically putting back into the existing trail network. So that's been really well received and built a lot of trust and enthusiasm from landowners. And like Chris and Jennifer alluded to, if we can showcase the benefits to them, not just of health and well-being, but of economic value to the community and to the landowners themselves in some cases, then that'll only enhance the case for working with more landowners on bigger and more extensive projects, or so we hope.
Can I give the Trail Association a big hurrah there as well? Because, you know, I mean, Will, you and Chris and others have been really, you know, key to creating this Trail Association. But I have noticed as the local authority, when I engage with landowners, to go back to that query, that when I mention the Trail Association, its respect is there and it opens a door for that wider conversation. So a typical example is that one of the things we're working on as the Northeast Adventure Tourism Group is the concept of a Northeast Highland Way, so connecting all the various from Martin and Buchan Way and the Deeside Way and the Speyside Way potentially together. But there's going to be gaps in that, and I've had conversations with some of the existing landowners who have been much more open to having those discussions because of the Trail Association. So I think it's one of the big successes in the last few years, and we absolutely have to keep that support going for them.
Yeah, thanks very much, Belinda. We thought this might come up, but there's a couple of questions about e-bikes, particularly about are there plans for any charging points either in the city or in the Shire to help promote adventure cycling by e-bike. I can say I know of a few independent businesses that are looking at their options to offer charging stations and charging points. And Chris can maybe expand on this, but we're working with his team and some partners from Sustrans and Visit Scotland around promoting some of our routes and businesses where people can call in. So that's maybe something we could look at as part of that project, Chris.
I think so. And the platform that's been provided, sitting on Visit Scotland, and it's obviously covering the whole country, that's a really, really important step. It's not simply about where you can ride your bike, it's where other experiences you can have, and crucially for the visitor economy, where you can spend your money as well. But making it friendly, making it usable, making it relevant to the audience, I think will require things like, you know, the practicalities of where you can charge up your bike if that is the kit that you're riding. So certainly something that can be taken forward as we start to get Aberdeenshire routes onto that platform.
Yeah, it should be a really exciting project, and more information to come out in early 2021 on that. And something else which might support businesses who want to have e-bike charging facilities or something relates to another question we've received. Today, Developing Mountain Biking in Scotland have launched a secure accommodation scheme. So that's a grant available to all accommodation providers in Aberdeenshire and Highland if you're in that region, but we're focused on Aberdeenshire. So it's up to £500 to improve the secure storage at your facility for, well, it's for general cyclists, but we'll say it's for mountain bikers in this forum. So that can be locks, hooks, it could be work stands, could be security cameras. There's some suggestions and stuff, and there will be a link on our website from later today about how to proceed through that process. And if anyone is interested in that, feel free to contact myself. Some of Chris's team will also have the information, and they'll be able to help you through the process. Or if you actually don't know what mountain bikers are really looking for, we'll have a wee video on our YouTube and Vimeo channels that you'll be able to watch. And again, you can talk that through with either myself or somebody from the Visit Aberdeenshire team. But it's all part of the joined up process. If someone wants to come here, because we have a great natural trail network being well maintained by a trail association, if they go to an accommodation, they want somewhere secure to keep their bike. So it's all part of the joined up process that we're working on together. Just moving back to the facilities questions, pump tracks have been mentioned in a couple of the questions. I'll not come to you, Jennifer, given what you just said about not knowing. So for anybody that doesn't, they're a small, usually urban facility, really, really good for developing skills and developing participation. How do we make those happen is basically the question that comes through. How do we get the funding and the planning permission and everything in place? So I'll maybe come to Belinda first.
Well, I think the most important thing is to identify the right site for obvious reasons. And that's something I think that probably is a really good point, isn't it? That we need to start engaging with our planning colleagues as well for them to understand it, because, you know, I'm not saying that they don't know what a pump track is, but they may not. So I think maybe there's an internal role that we use, the project that we're all working on collectively on to make sure our planners actually understand that. When it comes to funding, it's the usual mix, would be my view, and we've seen how, you know, groups like Tarland Trails can actually put together a funding package. It's not easy and it takes a long time. But actually, urban centres are actually the easier place at the moment to identify funding. We've got various funding come in from Scottish Government that generally is town centre focused. So if we can consider the right venue in the right town or the right urban setting, I think actually that's one of the better places to find funding at the moment. There are other funds out there that will be launched, I'm sure, as sort of COVID recovery, but also there's existing new, sort of fairly new funds like the Coastal Communities Fund. So sometimes we'll just find these facilities appearing in places where the funding is based. It may not be the obvious place, but that's probably just what we know what we want, and we have to follow where those funds take us to that point, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do know amongst the participants on this call, we've got several people working really hard on pump track projects. So if any of you listening are interested in getting more involved and helping with a pump track project as opposed to setting up your own, please just get in contact with myself and I can connect you with either the group that's closest to you or the one that makes where your skills would be most beneficial to use. And continuing on the facilities question, we have these natural trails, but generally they're not really accompanied by any level of facilities. Do the panel, maybe go to Jennifer and Chris, see a benefit of better car parks or base level facilities near these natural trails? And does that again involve working more collaboratively with the landowners to make sure that it works for everyone?
I mean, I'm really keen to come in. Well, and I think what's interesting is how much cycling, mountain biking, e-biking has grown in the few years we've been involved as Opportunity North East, or I've been involved. It seems to me we built a very early picture of mountain biking, and in terms of where we saw opportunities and where we saw the ability to connect up, it sounds to me like we maybe need an updated picture of that, Will, Belinda and Chris, because these are great ideas that make the whole picture come together, I think, really alive, whether it's having the right facilities in terms of e-charging, making sure where we need bigger space round about the built facilities to attract the events we want in the future. So that integrated view maybe needs a bit of refreshing compared to when we started out a couple of years ago. So I think the answer to many of the questions about do we need it, the answer is yes. How do we deliver it? Through knowing what we all want to achieve and what we need, and then going after pockets of funding at a project level. And then I recognise that underpinning that is a huge army of really passionate volunteers who also have often day jobs. And so how we as kind of the partners put in the supporting mechanisms to allow that to happen, and how Belinda works with her broader organisation to make sure that all the ambitions are married together. So it sounds to me we probably need a bit of an updated picture of what we think success might look like. And Will, I'll put that to you because you maybe already have that in hand, and forgive me if you have. And to the question about facilities, let's capture what we think we need and have them in the right places and have those conversations. And then in terms of people, I often talk about, could we clone Will? We haven't worked that one out yet. And I embarrass Will when I say that, you'll notice. So I really apologise for doing that again publicly, Will. I try not to do that on a big public platform, but there I have. I think if we can make a case for this being a bigger opportunity, we can make the case for more resources and people across our organisations that would not detract from the enthusiasm and support through the volunteer and the passionate people, but actually help move at a faster pace and coordinate. So I think a lot of those questions are helpful for us to reflect in terms of how we build our case for funding, both in the short term in terms of how does one support this opportunity to build capacity, but actually then how do we then use that to go for more funding to secure the broader ambition. So I know it's not very specific, but it is actually really useful, because I think, you know, mountain biking is moving on at a pace, cycling is moving on at a pace, and we just need to make sure we've got enough resources in place on the ground to keep up with that pace and build for the bigger picture and the bigger capital projects.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. And somewhat tying in just to the question about facilities around trails, thanks for the comment. Glenshee will be rebuilding their toilet blocks this year and having charging points for e-bikes. So that's just another example of a partner and a business identifying this opportunity, and really, really pleased to hear that coming through from Glenshee. Just got the message there now. Thanks very much.
One of the other things, Will, just to go into that facilities thing, is that I think, and I saw James's message as well, you know, so post full lockdown, Aberdeenshire, as did the whole of Scotland, and from what we gather, the whole of Europe in the outdoors, really found themselves almost overwhelmed at these sort of hotspots, particularly at the car parks in well-known patches. It's not a sustainable mode going forward. We're going to have to find a way of distributing people, because on the assumption staycations and hopefully people who found the outdoors this year will continue to come back to Scotland and come back to Aberdeenshire. But we were literally, you know, sort of having, as some of you know, we ended up as a council having to close the road up to Loch Mick on certain weekends. We just couldn't, the place couldn't sustain the number of cars that were trying to get up there. So we definitely need a strategic approach to this. It's not a case of just find some money and build another car park. That's not good. We're going to have to find the right places to build them, and or encourage people to actually park up in the villages or in the town centres, bring some economy to those places, and then use access to somewhere else. And I think Golspie is one of the really good examples of that, where you know you find yourself in the main car park in the village and able to access, you know, the facilities there, and then you cycle out from that point. I've been asked to, and we met for the first time this week, sit on a national group to look at the facilities and the infrastructure for rural tourism. I think it's seen as a national issue. It's not something that's just going to be solved overnight, clearly, but I think certainly Malcolm Ruffhead, the Chief Executive of Visit Scotland, has set that up, and is speaking to the Minister about that as well. So, you know, again, it's not going to be a quick change potentially, but if we have the right projects, we may have the ability to identify where in Aberdeenshire we need to improve our car parking facilities and other facilities such as the charging points, car charging points, all of the things that will bring people back into Aberdeenshire and hopefully spend money as well.
I guess that's an important consideration for you, Chris, as well as your team market the area. You've got to have some knowledge of what's available and where people can go and where it's sensible to send people as well.
Absolutely, that's where we come in on the point of facilities, and within our camp there's a really crucial role to communicate the what and the where and the why and the how to get there. And as Belinda just said, there were a lot of challenges over this summer, which meant we had to think on our feet in terms of trying to put some dispersal messages out there. We can't just rely upon, you know, being fleet of foot. There needs to be a more strategic approach to this. But the beauty is there is a great diversity of options for people to get out and enjoy riding their bikes at different levels and in different ways, and we don't need to fall back on the hotspots all the time. So that's a crucial role for any destination marketing organisation to communicate that effectively. And effectively doesn't just mean moving people around. As Belinda just mentioned there, if we can move people to where they can also spend a bit of money as well while they're about it, then visitors should start to make a net positive contribution to regional economies as well, and particularly rural economies. So very much in our camp, there's a lot of work to do on that front as we start to better position Aberdeenshire as an adventure tourism destination.
Yeah, just to pick up on that point about positioning Aberdeenshire, Chris and his team, along with the North East Adventure Tourism Project and Developing Mountain Biking in Scotland, have commissioned a few campaigns and some pieces to go out early next year to highlight the opportunity that we do have here in Aberdeenshire, and the research that Chris mentioned earlier. Even just showing people a picture of Aberdeenshire who have not been here before, it opens their eyes to the potential we have and opens it up as a destination where they may not have considered coming here before. So that's going to be really exciting, and we hope that some of that media content and some of that promotional push will come out, as I say, early next year, but it'll be done in a sustainable and controlled way so that we can manage our destination as well. So we're really looking forward to that. I'll go back to Jennifer on this one, just as a first response. We've got lots and lots of projects planned in the Northeast, but some of the larger funding sources that people might have been eyeing up have tailed away. There's a question here about whether there's professional support. It's suggesting through Aberdeenshire Council, but I guess through the whole NEAT project to help find funding for key projects.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things. Can we build an integrated project that can make a bid for funding in terms of the overall vision, but accepting that there's no fund to bid into in the way that there was in the early years of the Surrey Region deal for defined projects agreed in the Surrey Region deal, and that opportunity doesn't exist anymore. There's an approach which is, if there's a capital project ability to go for, we are ready to do that with a business case, but actually the work that's done round about that also supports some of the smaller projects. And actually, I think one of the questions I've got in my mind now that we need to take away is, into that project, do we build some form of community fund per se? Now, that might be tapping into other sources of funding, or it might be we need to go identify, as Belinda has already, how we can help these projects align to existing pots. But actually, if there's a shared ambition of what we're all trying to achieve, and that can then be flown through Aberdeenshire Council into the Coastal Communities Fund, then you're a step ahead of any other project that might come forward for funding. So there's a kind of balance between, we actually know we need to find capital funding with the major projects, and we need other funding for the connecting projects and the infrastructure projects, and where are their likely sources, but we make it part of the big ambition together. It will need different funding streams. So I think it's a yes and a yes. But I think because the environment of funding is changing rapidly at the moment in a post-COVID environment, the key thing is we all agree on the priorities that we want to put into a funding case. And then we start to look at where are the threads of funding that we can go for. So we need to connect up that work around about the bigger ambition to how that translates into some of the more localized projects that can move forward quickly if we can just get access to some smaller amounts of money. So again, I feel like I'm not giving specifics, but I'm expressing real willingness for us to act quickly to follow that through, to make sure we maintain momentum on the ground while we head for our bigger ambition.
Yeah, Belinda, are you looking to come in on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, if it's an existing community group, there is already support out there to access. For example, one of the 6 rural partnerships are there to help support community groups to find funding from existing sources. Aberdeenshire Voluntary Action can do the same as well. So there is a grant finder technology that these organisations can access. But I absolutely agree with Jennifer, is if we can collectively pull together some of these projects, we may be able to make bids at a strategic level to do them, but everyone has to be accepting that then takes longer, because the bidding for larger collective funding is a slower process. You may get more money at the end of the day, but also at the same time you need match funding, so that it swings and roundabouts in that sense.
Yeah, I think we're in the somewhat lucky position that we have a mountain bike development cluster that's been going for a few years that has brought a number of these projects together, and there is a reasonable shared understanding of joint aims. So that cluster will continue, and we are continuing to work with a lot of those projects at the moment. So fingers crossed for more funding and more development in the very near future. I'm conscious that we have less than a minute left. So we'd just like to thank all the panelists for their contribution and really insightful input. for everyone who's listened and for everyone who's asked questions. Really, really appreciate your time. If there's any questions that weren't answered or any follow-ups, you can connect with me on the Socio app on the Mountain Bike Gathering page, or you'll find my email address on the Developing Mountain Bike Scotland pages if you don't already have it. I hope you enjoy the rest of the Mountain Bike Gathering and hopefully see you all in real life on the trails soon. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.